Sir.
All right, Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. I hope you are doing well. Yesterday, we started a topic of international relations, arms control and disarmament, in which we discussed that what was the reason that the world realized about the arms control and disarmament subject, and the world saw, huge devastation in the World War One and Two, and after that, it, the world was the leaders of the world were convinced, they were compelled to reduce the arms and and control these arms. So nuclear weapons, the induction of nuclear weapons seriously impacted the thinking of the people around the globe, and they realized that now is the time that you have to take some steps to reduce this devastating weapon. So ultimately, many peace agreements, many arms control and disarmament agreements took place between the two major powers, United States of America and Russia, during the Cold War. And because during the Cold War, they were very close to nuclear exchange after Cuban Missile Crisis. So after that, they realized that now is the time that you have to limit these nuclear weapons. So many initiatives took place, which we discussed yesterday, and many other things are left, which we are going to cover today, inshallah. So yesterday we talked about different treaties between United States of America and Russia, and one of the treaty was SALT-1, Strategic Arms Limitations Control Treaty. This particular treaty, Arms Limitation Treaty, was also meant to reduce the number of nuclear warheads and other weapons, between these two states. So SALT-1 initially focused on two agreements. One, the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, which focused on ABM. For example, ABM is the ballistic missile defense capability, and they decided that each superpower is going to install ABM at one site to intercept incoming missiles. Now, what is the purpose of ABM or ballistic missile defense? It is the simple purpose that it is going to give you security from any incoming missile, hostile missile from the enemy. So this was the idea behind. So they decided with each other that they are going to deploy ABM only on one site, so that could give them second strike capability against the enemy. And they are not going to deploy ABM on all nuclear sites and all nuclear or other strategic sites. So this was the ultimate decision, and in 1972 they decided they are going to deploy ABM only on one location, only on one site. And an interim arms agreement limiting the number of intercontinental ICBMs and submarine launched ballistic missiles to those already deployed by specific dates in 1972. So the other step was to reduce the number of ICBMs and SLBMs. ICBMs are intercontinental ballistic missiles, which can take out targets from one continent to another, and SLBMs, submarine launched ballistic missile, which could be launched through a submarine. So a nuclear submarine in the seas, it can travel a huge distance, and if you deploy nuclear missile on it, so that is very, very lethal. So they also decided that one, they are going to have ABM. Number two, they are going to reduce the size of ICBMs and SLBMs. The agreement was meant to set limits before a more definitive SALT-2 treaty could be negotiated. So SALT-2 was another treaty which focused on more reduction of nuclear warheads. When SALT-2 treaty was signed in 1979, it set a limit of 2,400 strategic missiles and bombers for each side. So it decided that both sides are not going to have more than 2,400 nuclear warheads or bombers which can take or transport nuclear warheads. So this was the ultimate decision in the SALT-2. So the ABM treaty of SALT-1 was much more successful than the interim ICBM and SLBM treaty agreement. Why? Because both countries decided to go for ABM, but they did not focus on the ICBM and SLBM. Both possessed huge quantity of nuclear weapons and SLBM, submarine launched ballistic missiles, but they did not focus on the reduction of these weapons. Because the SALT agreement limited only the number of ICBM launchers or missiles, both superpowers went on in the 1970s to develop missiles with multiple warheads called multiple independent re-entry vehicles. For example, इसको MIRVs भी कहा जाता है, MIRVs, MIRVs. Now, what is a MIRV? A MIRV can, it can take multiple, warheads at a multiple locations. For example, now Pakistan have also developed this capability. When your enemy is superior than you conventionally, and they have possessed more nuclear weapons than you, and they also install BMD technology like S-400, the Indians have deployed now. So the other countries who are economically weak, they can go for MIRVs. And a MIRV is basically one rocket can take multiple warheads, and these multiple warheads can hit multiple location, multiple targets. So such type of capability is very dangerous, and these capabilities were developed after 1970s, and Russia and America both developed these capabilities. So technically, these capabilities can nullify the the usage of air defense systems. So adding warheads to missile also made nuclear deterrence more unpredictable. A superpower with MIRVs could have enough warheads to destroy the opponent's retaliatory capability. So this was also a threat, and these threats were associated with arms control and disarmament. Compliance with the SALT treaties became a contentious issue in 1980s when the United States accused the USSR of violating treaty provisions on the development of new missiles. So actually, it was the mistrust between the United States of America and Soviet Union that they never trusted each other. And at that time, Soviet war in Afghanistan, the Holy War, according to America, was on full peak. So both countries were developing more and more nuclear warheads. They were developing different type of capabilities. In 1986, United States exceeded limits set by SALT-2 when a B-52 bomber equipped with cruise missiles entered active service. So the limitations which were there in the SALT-2, they were ignored by the United States of America, and they introduced B-52 bomber. And this particular bomber can take out, huge territory with in one go. So such type of capabilities are very, very dangerous. B-52 bomber had the range of about 14,000 kilometers, so it can take out any target around the globe. So such type of capabilities would seriously challenge the security of other states, and it could take approximately 31,500 kg of mixed ordnance, which could be bombs, mines, missiles, smart weapons, and it can also be modified to carry air-launched cruise missiles or decoy missiles, just to confuse the air defense capabilities of the enemy. So such type of initiatives seriously challenge the arms control and disarmament regime. Another initiative between the United States of America and Soviet Union, actually it was the Soviet Union, America's own initiative, SDI, and the idea was that the United States of America is going to maintain a shield which is going to protect America from any missile strike from any third party. So such type of capability was very, very important at that time. SDI would effectively shield the United States of America from a Soviet missile launch or any other third party. SDI would also protect the land-based leg of the United States nuclear triad, like for example, their nuclear submarines, their aircraft bombers, and their silos. Many doubted whether such a missile defense system could actually be created. इसका मतलब ये था कि they are going to have install a shield, different type of air defense systems, and space based air defense systems, and all these type of capabilities which are going to protect the United States of America's mainland from any attack from the Soviet Union. तो एक मिसाइल से अपने आप को उन्होंने shield बनाने के लिए they came up with this idea. So this type of capabilities are called as SDI initiative, and this was very important initiative at that time. In 1987, United States of America, they also, and the Soviet Union, they also, decided for intermediate range nuclear forces treaty, and relations between the superpowers eventually warmed when the Mikhail Gorbachev emerged as the leader of the Soviet Union in the mid 1980s, and they decided to, they go for the breakup of Soviet Union. So the focus on military modernization, it was reduced in the Soviet Union because they were facing economic challenges. In 1987, President Reagan and Soviet General Secretary Gorbachev signed the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, another major step in arms control. So the idea was the INF Treaty called for the elimination of an entire class of short and intermediate range 300 to 3,400 mile nuclear missiles. So this was the main idea behind. These included 1,752 Soviet and 859 US missiles. It was the first treaty to result in a reduction in the number of nuclear weapons, and this was a very important treaty at that time. The agreement also involved the most complete verification procedures ever for an arms control treaty. These included data exchanges, on-site inspections, and monitoring by surveillance satellites. So basically, they ensured that both sides they showed compliance, and both sides actually reduced the number of warheads. So many inspections, on-site inspections, were also carried out by the IAEA and other inspectors, and monitoring by a surveillance satellite was also there, just to ensure that they are abandoning many nuclear weapons. Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. After the INF Treaty, the superpowers continued to try out a strategic arms reduction treaty that would cut the number of long-range missiles by 50%. So this was also very important because both countries possessed long-range missiles and huge stockpiles of long-range missiles, which could take out, these countries many times over. By that time, the superpowers each had nuclear arsenal that could destroy the other many times over, and a 50% reduction would still leave nuclear deterrence well intact. So basically, the idea was to maintain nuclear deterrence, but with lesser nuclear weapons. So the chances of accidents can reduce, the chances of war, miscalculation, accidental launch can reduce. So this was the idea behind. Between 1989 and 1991, a number of significant events brought about the end of Cold War. And in 1989, Gorbachev surprised the world when he led the Soviet Union in its decision to give up its control over Eastern Europe. By the summer of 91, not only had the Warsaw Pact, a unified group consisting of Soviet Union and its allies in Eastern Europe, dissolved, but so had the Soviet Union itself. Soviet Union communism, one half of the superpower equation for over 40 years, had imploded. So basically, the US faced threat from the collective Soviet Union. Now the Soviet Union was no more, and the threat was reduced. So there was no need to have more and more nuclear warheads or conventional capabilities. So that was the point when the United States of America and Soviet Union, they decided to go for conventional forces in Europe treaty. Now, during this time of increasing warm relations between the superpowers, they were improving ties. A number of major arms control treaties were created. On November 19, 1990, the United States, the USSR, and 20 other countries signed Conventional Forces in Europe Treaty. Now, CFE or Conventional Forces Treaty meant for only conventional weapons. They were not meant for nuclear weapons, which President George W. Bush Sr. called the farthest reaching arms agreement in history, an accord that signals the new world order is emerging. So what was the idea behind? The idea was that the treaty, they decided that each superpower, they are going to limit their forces to 275,000 troops in Europe only. And as events unfolded in Eastern Europe, however, the countries of the former Eastern Bloc became independent from the Soviet Union. That number of troops began to seem high. Under the CFE treaty, each side was allowed to deploy in area between Atlantic Ocean and the Ural Mountains no more than 20,000 tanks. This was the limit. 30,000 armored troops carriers, 20,000 artillery pieces, 6,800 combat airplanes, and 2,000 attack helicopters. ये जो सारी चीजें थी, they were allowed in area from spanning from Atlantic Ocean to Ural Mountains, as you can see in this map as well. This area, which is spanning from Atlantic Ocean to the Ural Mountains, which means some parts of Russia, some parts of Caspian Sea as well, and these Eastern European states. So in this area, they are going to have these capabilities installed, and they are not going to have more than these capabilities. So the treaty required the Soviet Union to disarm or destroy nearly 20,000 tanks because they developed huge capabilities during the Cold War. And they also decided to reduce their artillery pieces and other weapons, and to give a 27% reduction in Soviet armaments west of the Urals. The decrease was small. However, compared with 59,000 weapons this USSR shipped east of the Urals to Central Asia between 1989 to 1990, as it sought to realign its forces in response to the world events. So basically, on the other side, the NATO forces were required to destroy fewer than 3,000 pieces of military equipment as compared to the Soviet Union, because Soviet Union developed huge capabilities at that time. The United States, for its part, reduced 320,000 troops it had in Europe by at least 50%. So this was also a good step towards in the 90s, just to reduce their conventional forces in the region. Arms agreements on nuclear weapons were also reached during this period, which is called Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. And on July 31, 91, Bush and Gorbachev signed the first Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, START 1. Negotiations on the treaty is technically complex accord had begun as early as 1982. The agreement required the USSR to reduce its nuclear arsenal by roughly 25%, and the United States to reduce the arsenal by 15%. So they'll be at par. There'll be balance of power between the two nations. And despite this reduction, the nuclear deterrence would remain intact. So this was the idea behind. Numerically speaking, the USSR would reduce its nuclear warheads from 10,800 to 8,000, and the United States would reduce its nuclear warheads from 12,000 to 10,000. So ultimately, both were closer to each other. These amounts would bring the nuclear arsenals of each nation roughly back to levels that existed in 1982 when START negotiations began. So this was a very good step towards reducing the weapon. The agreement also limited the development of new missiles and required a number of verification procedures, including on-site inspections with spot checks, monitoring of missile production plants, and exchange of data tapes from missile tests. So basically, this particular step was also very effective to reduce arms, nuclear weapons, during that period between the two nations. During the Clinton era, in 90s, the administration of Bill Clinton, who became the president of the United States in 93, he revived the debate surrounding missile defense systems and created fears that a new arms race might begin. So he came up with the idea that they are going to revive the ballistic missile defense capabilities. And when it developed a proposal for the THAAD, which is a very highly sophisticated air defense system. THAAD is American air defense system which protects America from any incoming missile. So they were facing threats from North Korea, they were facing threat from Iran, they were facing threat from many other countries like Russia. So they came up with the idea, now they are going to deploy THAAD in Europe, so and other parts of the area, so they can protect themselves from any accidental or intentional launch of missile against the United States of America. So THAAD, basically, it is also highly sophisticated air defense system, and it detects the enemy missile at a range of about more than 200 kilometers, and it takes out then effectively. So THAAD is right now it is deployed in East Asia. America's position there in East Asia. America's there in Japan. It is also there in South Korea, they are there. These air defense systems are um, uh, trying to protect themselves from incoming missiles of China, North Korea, or any other enemy state. So this was the idea behind the development of THAAD. So THAAD, as I told you before, it is a terminal high altitude area defense system, and the system has a track record of 100% mission success in flight testing. So basically, in testing, in exercises, it has shown some great capabilities, but in reality, in the wartime situation, it has never been tested.